Hello, guys. So today I want to bring to you a free masterclass on Whiteforce Azamina, both including pre and post ALIN content. For the people that are watching for post ALIN content only and are already familiar with Whiteforest, I would suggest to skip the video until the part where I talk about post ALIN. I will include a timestamp in the video. And anyways, without further ado, let us get started. But also, I would like to say that I really want to do this video, mainly because I heavily dislike paywalling spreadsheets, especially if the content that is in the free sample of said spreadsheet is flawed. Uh, but anyways, let's get to actual content. So first of all, who am I? If you've literally just found this channel off of this video, my name is Rebirth of Sheehan. I am a small content creator for Yu-Gi-Oh! That is mainly focused on doing deck profiles and tech discussions for rogue decks of my liking. I play or played in a team called Team Azrael. It's a small German team uh, with uh, with no real big successes. And also, my notable placements have not been stellar. But for example, for the in the 2024 Austrian Nationals, I went 34th with Dogmatica Ritual. Uh, on the German Open 2023, I got 21st after Swiss with Dogmatica Bestial Ritual and some other results. Anyways, what is White Forest? White Forest is a synchro engine featuring a light spell caster and light illusion plethora of monsters that was released in Infinite Forbidden. It usually requires you to send spells and traps to the graveyard to activate its effects. In archetype spells and traps usually reset themselves when sent for the cost of a monster effect to mediate this inherent cost of the archetype, which is a big downside of the archetype. Spells and traps also require you to control a spellcaster or illusion, or in one case, a fiend monster to activate them, which should hinder you in splashing this engine in every deck you want to, or immediately shotgunning the spells. And it specializes in synchros that of the level 6, 8, 10, and sometimes 12. And it is a lore archetype bound to the Diabell Star lore. And the other archetype that I have to talk about in tandem is Azamina or Sinful Spoils. Sinful Spoils is also part of the Diabell Star lore, and it is, together with Azamina, an engine that substitutes fusion materials by using Sinful Spoils cards, those not only spells and traps, but also monsters, for some kind of a level or a pseudo tribute summoning mechanic that allows you to cheat out fusion monsters from your extra deck. The main monsters of this engine are very limited. There are only two Azamina monsters, and I will only talk about one of them in the main deck. And it is heavily tied within the Diabell Star wanted Sinful Spoils engine as an access point for the engine, etc. Why am I talking about both of these engine in tandem? It is because Elzet Azamina of the White Forest is one of the Azamina monsters that I mentioned, but also a White Forest monster. And it bridges White Forest and Sinful Spoils seamlessly and without opportunity cost. The only cost, so to speak, being that you need to use this as a synchro material for a synchro monster. It fixes core issues of the White Forest engine by being the only White Forest card that gains its effect off, except for Sylvie, that can special summon itself from the hand and gain its value without requiring discards. And also it has insane flexibility by the just of it having three effects. So previous topping lists from other players, so that you just get a little bit of an idea what current formats, so pre-ALIN White Forest list looks like. It is often paired with Fiendsmith, as Fiendsmith is naturally a very good engine in this in this current format, and yeah, it's a pretty solid pairing because it helps with core issues of White Forest. This one specifically is YCS Houston, top 32, piloted by Felix Tyler. It is the most recent premier top of the deck. What are common mistakes that this deck has when you're deck building for it? Wrong amount of non-engine. Since the deck is very engine heavy, you cannot just go in like most other decks of the current format and splash in 18 to 20 hand traps. It will not go well and the deck will not play very well. Bad choices of non-engine. Uh, some non-engine in this deck works better than others. Specifically, cards that are spells or traps are exceptionally good in White Forest, simply due to a doubling for the discard mechanic of the White Forest monster. Extra deck is not focused on in-archetype cards. A lot of people like to go overboard on sub-engines, for example, Fiendsmith. But I am of the opinion that if you concentrate more on the actual engine of the stack and playing in archetype cards, you can gain a lot of play value and options off of this. And also, bad sub engine. I'll get to that in a second. Why do we want to play White Forest Azamina? It has a fragmented game plan. It's pseudo-linear. That means you have sort of an end goal that always kind of looks the same how you play through it, but the way how you access this synchro ladder that you do with White Forest is differs from hand to hand or from situation to situation. It's also a multi-engine kitchen sink-like deck by card design. That means you're playing multiple engines which have in each other their separate game plans, which makes it by nature very good to play through low impact hand traps, multiple so's even. It even creates lose scenarios within the combos for your opponent. That means no matter where they hand trap them after a certain point, it doesn't gain them much to any value. Also, it has access to a massive searchable card pool, similar to Baron de Despia, because of it being able to access both White Forest, Azamina, and Sinful Spoils cards. Also, most cards gain double value when interacting with other cards of the archetype. This means that you get to activate multiple effects of cards per card, which is fairly great. Also, there are certain lines that, if they resolve, almost guarantee you a win. This deck can be treated sort of like a pseudo FTK, simply because the board that this deck builds is very high powered. Also, this deck has a very high OTK potential by the reason of it being able to cheat damage on board, have a lot of removal, or bypass your opponent controlling monsters. Also, arguably, it has one of the best follow-ups in the game if you get to build your board. And yeah, the full board is, as said, sort of a pseudo FTK, especially for Link, Synchro, and XYZ decks. Why do you don't want to play White Forest? Uh, Previous ban list, Shifter and Abyss Dweller were both at 3, and Dimension Shifter and Abyss Dweller significantly impacted the stack. This is no longer the case because both Dimension Shifter got put to 1 and Abyss Dweller got banned. Also, another issue of the deck was Drone Lockbird being a real big issue for this deck. This is still the case, but if the format shifts, towards a less draw favored format, this deck will shine. It also plays very badly into Malice end boards if your opponent knows how to interact with the deck. There's a kill condition that you can do with Saint Azamina, and later with ALIN cards, with some ALIN cards. But the main issue is that Silvera does nothing versus Lynx, which Silvera is the Synchro 6 monster from White Forest that flips all monsters your opponent controls face down and enables you to deal double piercing damage with Synchro monsters. Ryziel Detonator plus DDD High Wave King Caesar plus Ryziel Cross was a hard board for this deck to beat, but we have to see how good Ryziel is. Also, this deck is really difficult, as you will come to see, especially for the post-ALIN uh, content. And also, Mermail was basically this deck, but slightly better because it completely ignores Bestials. And also, this deck is kind of expensive. Let's go to the core engine of the deck. The basic engine of this deck pre-ALIN is you play 6 1.5 card full combo starters in form of 3 Sylvie and 3 LZ of the White Forest. You play 5 direct Azamina enablers, 1 Witch, 1 Deception, triple Wanted, uh, and then you play 5 situational extenders, that being LZ Azamina of the White Forest, Ruchia of the White Forest, Tails of the White Forest, Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, and technically also Hollowed Azamina. And then you play 1 archetypal trap, usually. Then if you want to build upon this engine a little bit more, you can add way more engine. This is like the bare minimum that you would need for the deck to function in its basics, but it's not ideal. It helps to add more starters into the stack. Keep in mind, again, this is pre-ALIN. This is my deck building pre-ALIN. You can also add cards like a Stellar of the White Forest, 1.5 card starter too for White Forest, but very easily stoppable and if interacted with, uh, resource inefficient. The more engine you add to this deck, the more 2 to 3 card combinations you will open, which makes you able to sequence your cards better. And if the cards interact with each other, they sort of work like Snake Eye in the form that uh, 2 engine cards can sometimes not be stopped by 2 hand traps, depending on what the hand trap is, of course. Also, adding more cards also fixes some consistency issues, again, because sometimes you need to do 2 card combos to fully combo. And in this list, I added, compared to the first setup, an Azamina Soul Arrow Sicton, because the Azamina engine itself, if it only is played with Mu Archilago and Ilia Sylvia, only offers you an Omni Negate and nothing in terms of removal. Then if you want to add even more, there is also some more Azamina monsters that require 2 or more Sinful Spoils cards to be sent off of Hollowed Azamina to summon them. These are optional but highly powered and allow you to do a lot of plays, especially post-ALIN. I'll get to that. Um, Also, they enable already pre-ALIN some neat combos. For example, there is currently pre-ALIN a line that you can play that allows you to do basically ignore a Nibiru and force your opponent to throw Nibiru at a certain time. And if they throw it at that certain time, uh, you alter your board to something different. On the left, you will see a board that is made if your opponent does not have Nibiru, and on the right, you see a board that is made if your opponent has had Nibiru and used it against you. Also, you're getting in process of this, you're getting rid of the Nibiru. I'll get to this a little later because there is an ALIN version of this combo that is even better. In this example, I also use the Fiendsmith engine to end on DDD High Wave King Caesar. Also, if you want to watch the replays that I linked in this in this document, the document is linked in the description of this video. Also, doing stuff with Saint Azamina can allow you to kill people and end the game through board states that usually are very hard to OTK through. This is what I meant with high OTK potential. Saint Azamina allows you to deal double damage, not double damage, reflected damage to your opponent by attacking their big monsters. In this example, I killed my opponent by using his Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon and its beefy 4000 defense to ram 0 attack monsters into, dealing effectively 8000 damage and ending the game right there. If you want to add even more cards, a very nice card that you can play is Sinful Spoils of Subversion Snake Eye. This is a very common one of tech choice in this deck, simply by the notion of it being able to address a currently format relevant Ryziel Detonator by summoning Diabellstar of the Black Witch and forcing your opponent to interact unfavorably with you. Another card that is able to be played and should be played is Sinful Spoils of the White Forest. Sinful Spoils of the White Forest is the only Sinful Spoils card that is also a White Forest card, which means that this is the only Sinful Spoils card that is able to be searched off of both Sylvie of the White Forest and Archiella, Sinful Soul of the White Forest, and without use of Azamina LZ. It also allows you to special summon one Fiend, Illusion, or Spellcaster monster from your hand as a quick effect. Or, if you want to use this as an interaction, you can fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck instead by using monsters from your hand or field. And also, of course, because it is a White Forest spell, it has the inherent effect that allows this card to be reset from the graveyard if sent for cost to activate a monster effect. This not only includes White Forest monsters, but also cards like Chaos Hunter or Abao, uh, the Link monster Abao. I would at least suggest that you play one of those because this allows you to do a lot of fancy stuff. Azamina Adapters is a way more optional, but is a technical alternative to searching as the Hollowed Azamina, because this does the same thing as Hollowed Azamina, but instead of being not once per turn, it is a quick effect that you can use this. And also this has a really good graveyard effect, which allows you to banish Azamina Adapters from your graveyard to revive an Azamina monster from your graveyard, which not only includes the fusion monsters, but also Azamina LZ. So this allows you to play better into interaction. Uh, Azamina White Forest has access to two White Forest cards. One is Azamina Aphis, White Forest Traps. One is Azamina Aphis, and the other is Woes of the White Forest. Azamina Aphis is always treated as a White Forest card and can uh, can bounce cards on the field up to the number of fusion and synchro monsters on your field or in your graveyard that are fiend, illusion, or spellcasters. Also, it can bounce your own cards, so if you want follow-up, you can use Azamina Aphis in that way. While Woes allows you to special summon one White Forest monster from your hand or deck, and then immediately after this effect resolves, allows you to synchro summon one White Forest monster, White Forest synchro monster. And also, both of these cards have the inherent effect of if being sent to graveyard for cost to activate a monster effect, they get to reset themselves. Which one should you play? In my opinion, Woes is better because Woes plays better into simplified game states because Azamina Aphis requires you to have a certain setup field. So if you want to run one of these traps, I would consider running Woes, but I cannot stop you from running Azamina Aphis as this card has its own justifications. Also, you can play this deck with Fiendsmith as mentioned, and this is an example where I'm playing this with Fiendsmith, and I'll get to why I'm playing it like this in one moment. Uh, why am I playing Fiendsmith Sanct over Tract? Tract is the standard way to play this, and to play the Fiendsmith engine right now in most decks by playing one Fiendsmith Tract and one Fabled Lurry. And this usually enables you to off of Engraver end on a Desiree. But this deck does not always need to end on a Desiree, and instead it can be sometimes better to just end on a DDD Highway King Caesar, and Fiendsmith Sanct is better. It does the same thing as Tract in this situation, only with the benefit that if Engraver has to search Tract, you lose to Droll and Lockbird, while if Engraver has to search Sanct, you get to summon this DDD Highway King Caesar for Droll and Lockbird. Also, it means that we do not have to play Fabled Lorry, which is one suboptimal draw less in our deck. And as said, Fiendsmith Desiree we do not need. And there is a secret effect on Fiendsmith Sanct that allows this card to be set from the graveyard if a Fiendsmith monster is destroyed by your opponent's card effect. Or, yeah, by your opponent's card effect. This can come up sometimes. For example, if your engraver is interacted with on the crackback, this allows you to set this card, which means that you have a sort of uh, you have access to a spell that you can send for your White Forest effects, which are notoriously very hungry, spell and trap discard hungry. Also, there's another bad part about Fiendsmith Sanct, which makes you locked into attacking with only Fiends, which means Diabellstar Vengeance, Chaos Angel, and Fiendsmith Engine are the only cards that you can use to attack your opponent with, which is a little bit unideal going second. Another engine that you can play and is very popular in Master Duel is the Millennium Engine. The Millennium Engine facilitates you to use both the Millenniums and Snake Eye Doom Dragon, which Millennium enables, to summon a zombie vampire, which in return can get you access to your engine, as well as allowing you to go into Fiendsmith combo relatively efficiently. This is a good option. It's been proven in Master Duel that that it's playable as of now, but post ALIN, I would reconsider this. Toybox is another very popular engine, and beware here, I have my own opinions about this. I do not think that Toybox is very good and is not required for you to play this deck. So I will not go much into it, except for saying that these cards do not play on their own and require multiple cards to actually function, which is not good. Non-engine options. As of now, we can play Super Polymerization fairly well, mainly because Magistus Corroso exists. Magistus Corroso allows us to fuse off any spellcaster, which most of our monsters are, and any extra deck monster that our opponent controls into a Magistus Corroso, which is a level 4 spellcaster tuner, which is quite great. And getting rid of cards while your opponent not being able to interact with us is fairly solid. Also, it allows us to go into cards like Solar Cyclone by fusing away an illusion and, for example, your opponent's Fiendsmith monster, Mora Regina if you want to get rid of a Desiree, or Saint Azamina if they have a fusion and a synchro monster, which is ironically really good in the mirror. Also, Garura and Muddragon of the Swamp are excellent stable options for those. Also, cards that you can run. Black Goat Lass is a good discard for this deck. Fuvalos and Triple Tactics Thrust are self-explanatory, and the same goes for most hand traps. Infinite Impermanence being here an honorable mention because it is a trap card that you can use for cost. And Lancia also being an honorable mention because you can set Lancia as a spell as a continuous spell, which then allows you to send it for cost to, for example, activate an LZ of the White Forest. Good. From here on, I'll talk now about post ALIN, and this is where the actual meat gets into the presentation. So get ready and buckle your seatbelts. So, what is White Forest Azamina gaining post ALIN? You're gaining a lot of cards. The first one being Diabellstar Vengeance, part of our end board now. It is a good secondary interrupt into full loss, and it's also a board breaker. And most importantly, this card is also a Sinful Spoils card, in addition to being a Diabell Star monster. Diabell's the White Witch is usually the way you set up the Diabell Star, the Sin Adjudicator, and also offers you protection from your opponent's destruction effects, which is really relevant against the up and coming Mitsurugi, as well as decks like Unchained or decks that like to run board breakers like Tenpai. Witches of the White Forest is our first true one card combo for White Forest, but I will have to give this an asterisk, and you will see later why. Philia Diabel is a spell card that allows you to search a level 8 or higher Diabel monster, or if only your opponent controls monsters and you do not, you can instead special them. That means you can, for example, cheat out a Diabel Star Vengeance off of this card. Also, when this card is banished, all your Diabel monsters gain 500 attack permanently, which is fairly good. Um, Also, keep in mind, Diabell monsters include Diabell, Diabells, and Diabell Star monsters. Then, as next, we are gaining a level 4 Illusion Synchro Tuner monster in the form of Popular of the White Forest. Popular enables us to go into Snake Eyes Damned Dragon in engine, and also allows us to quick synchro on our opponent's turn if we choose to do so. Meanwhile, Snake Eyes Vengeance Dragon is a really good level 12 option for this deck that allows us to beat Graveyard Follow-Up and Floaters, as well as removing a lot of cards during the battle phase. Azamina, and yes, this card is literally just called Azamina, is a contact fusion you can do with Saint Azamina and one of your opponent's monsters to summon this card. Also, this has a Floodgate effect where it reduces your opponent's monster's attack, and if the attack reaches 0, they cannot use those monsters' effects. And Curse of the Abel being a trap card that allows you to destroy all face-up cards your opponent controls if you control 2 or more Diabell monsters. Uh, and and more importantly, if this card is sent to the graveyard or banished from the hand or deck, you get to add one Diabell spell from your deck to your hand, except for this card, except for Curse of Diabell itself. This allows you to search Philia Diabell, which then enables you to go into Diabell Star Vengeance. All right. So, how do you play these new cards? Diabells is the pivot point to getting into this engine. You usually search Diabells, the White Witch, off of Witches of the White Forest, but also can do the searcher off of Argiella, Sinister Soul of the White Forest, Tales of the White Forest, Elzet of White Forest, as well as, if you want to be spicy, Nightmare Apprentice. By summoning Diabells, she foolishes one Diabell or Sinful Spoils card from your deck to your graveyard, which usually means that you foolish Curse of Diabell, which then gets you access to Philias Diabell, which you then use to search Diabellstar the Sin Adjudicator. And you summons Diabellstar the Sin Adjudicator by banishing both Curse of Diabell as well as Philia Diabell from your graveyard. This enables a Diabell Star to have another. This enables both effects to be resolved in full of both Diabell, the White Witch, as well as Diabell Star Vengeance. Diabell, the White Witch, has the protection effect that if you control 2 or more Diabell monsters, all your monsters cannot be destroyed by card effects. While Diabell Star, the Sin Adjudicator, allows you to quick effect pay half your life points to destroy one card your opponent controls, and then if you control another Diabell monster, allows you to special summon from your extra deck one Synchro, Illusion, or Spellcaster Tuner, which means that you can summon your White Forest monsters, which are Archiella, Silvera, and Popular. And also, because Diabell Star is a Sinful Spoils card, you can use her as material for the Hollowed Azamina or Azamina Depters to summon Azamina cards. This only applies, of course, if you're not under the restriction of Witches of the White Forest. Alternatively, if you already opened Curse of Diabel, or if you opened Foolish Burial Goods, you play this line slightly differently. You use, for example, if you use Foolish Burial Goods to send Curse of Diabel from your deck to the graveyard, you then use Curse of Diabel to search Filius Diabel, Filius Diabel to search Diabel's the White Witch. You summon Diabel's the White Witch by discarding one spell or trap or sending one from your field to the graveyard. Then you use Diabel's the White Witch to foolish Diabellstar Vengeance. Because Diabellstar Vengeance is both a Diabell monster as well as a Sinful Spoils monster. And also Diabell's Star Vengeance can be summoned from her graveyard with her effect. Alternatively, if you want to use Diabell's not to gain access to Diabellstar's Vengeance, you could use her to send Sinful Spoils of Slumber, Morion from your deck to the graveyard, then use Sinful Spoils of Slumber Morion graveyard effect to reset itself because Diabel's the White Witch is a level 5 or higher illusion monster. Good. How do you combo? This is a lot to take in, so take a minute and look at this flowchart. So what you usually want to do is use one of your level 4 tuners as well as one of your level 2 non-tuners to go into Archiella, which then allows you to gain access to Witches of the White Forest, which then allows you to gain access to the Diabel's the White Witch line, which gets you access again to Diabel's Star Vengeance, or Morion if you want to. Also, during the process of laddering up to Diabel, Queen of the White Forest, also a Diabel monster, by the way, keep that in mind. You want to resolve Elzet Azamina of the White Forest's effect to gain access to your Azamina engine via Deception of the Sinful Spoils. It's very important that you search Deception of the Sinful Spoils for one certain reason. I'll get into it right now. But actually, not right now. I want to talk about an alternative way you can get into combo technically. You can also utilize Diabellstar the Black Witch by playing Magistus Corrozo in your extra deck to get into Archilla by Diabellstar searching Deception, Deception searching Hollowed by tributing one monster from your hand or field that is not specifically Diabellstar the Black Witch. Then you can use the Hollowed Azamina to summon Mu Archilago, which gets you access to Elzet Azamina of the White Forest. You then can summon Elzet Azamina of the White Forest off of her own effect. Then you can contact fuse both Mu Archilago as well as Diabellstar the Black Witch into Magistus Corrozo. A level 4 tuner and a level 2 non-tuner make Archiella Sinister Soul of the White Forest. And to get the discard for Sinister Soul, you will want to shuffle back Mu Archilago from your graveyard after using her as the contact fusion material for Corrozo to gain one spell in this context. Usually you would like to instead discard one spell from your hand, but this is an alternative option because we will get access to Hollow later on. Then, as said, you can synchro summon Archiella by using Corrozo, as well as Elzet Azamina of the White Forest. And then Archiella will get you access to Elzet of the White Forest, while Elzet Azamina, in this context, gets you access to Sinful Spoils of the White Forest. This is very important because Sinful Spoils of the White Forest has the White Forest exclusive effect of resetting itself if used for cost for a monster. Then we use Sinful Spoils of the White Forest as cost for Elzet to special summon Elzet and search Sylvia of the White Forest. Then Sinful Spoils of the White Forest will reset itself, which we then can later use as material to summon Ilia Sylvia, and we then summon together with Elzet of the White Forest and Archiella Sinister Soul of the White Forest into Diabel Queen of the White Forest. Diabel Queen of the White Forest gets to add back our Hollowed Azamina from our graveyard to our hand, which we then can use to summon Ilia Sylvia. Then we can normal summon Sylvia of the White Forest to search Witches of the White Forest, which then searches as Diabel's the White Witch. This plays suboptimally into Nibiru, but well, this is also a suboptimal combo and is only to be done if necessary. And of course, if you play the requirements for this. Part two. As soon as we get to search the deception package, we actually become nib proof if we do it on the standard way. So if we follow this slide here. After summoning Archiella, Sinister Soul of the White Forest, and ideally Elzet Azamina of the White Forest, we synchro both of them into Diabel, Queen of the White Forest, which gets to retrieve us one of our spells or traps from our graveyard to our hand. And Elzet Azamina of the White Forest will always search Deception of the Sinful Spoils, because Wanted now has a cool new interaction. Then we use Deception of the Sinful Spoils. So we activate Deception of the Sinful Spoils. Then we resummon Sylvie from our graveyard, or tribute any dead monster from our hand by shuffling Archiella, Sinister Soul of the White Forest from our graveyard into our deck, and then summoning Sylvie. This enables us a free tribute. Also, from the point you summon Diabel, Queen of the White Forest, you are on summon 5, so your opponent can Nibiru you at all times. But we are going to make it hard for our opponent because we play an Omni Negate we can access. By activating evading Hollowed Azamina, we put our opponent under pressure by threatening to summon Azamina Ilia Sylvia. Very important for this interaction is that Hollowed Azamina does not require you to show for cost what you want to summon. So on the first summon, we try to summon Azamina Mu Archielago to search a wanted seeker of sinful spoils. Then we recycle Hollowed Azamina by shuffling back Elzet Azamina of the White Forest into our deck to add it back. Then we chainlink one Hollowed Azamina, chainlink to Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils. If our opponent does not want to Nibiru us here, we just summon Ilia Sylvia, which then means that we have an Omni Negate if they decide to hold Nibiru for that long. So Nibiru will trade 1 for the Omni Negate. However, if your opponent decides to actually use Nibiru here, instead of searching Diabellstar the Black Witch off of Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils, we will search Diabellstar the Sin Adjudicator, or Diabellstar Vengeance, now known as in TCG. Then we can use both Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils and Diabellstar Vengeance as a material for Hollowed Azamina, because Hollowed Azamina will be Chainlink 1 to summon Moa Regina. Your opponent will have tributed your Diabel, Queen of the White Forest for cost, and not for cost, for Nibiru, and getting rid of it in the process. But that will not last for long, because now we can activate Azamina Moa Regina's effect in our graveyard to summon back Diabel, Queen of the White Forest. Also, in the process of this combo, we searched Witches of the White Forest. So later on, when we attempt to summon Diabellstar Vengeance, we get to use Azamina Moa Regina to pop both either the Nip token and our Nibiru, or if your opponent Nibiru'd you on the first activation of Hollowed Azamina, you get to actually tribute Azamina Moa Archielago, and then search one Sinful Spoils spell from your deck by order of its tribute effect. However, some people will dislike to play Moa Regina, so I have an alternative to this line. Instead of actually not summoning Ilia Sylvia if we get Nibiru'd, we will actually summon Ilia Sylvia. Then we will use Witches of the White Forest to summon Diabels, which gets us access to Diabellstar Sin Adjudicator. Wanted will search us Diabellstar the Black Witch to get us access to either Morion or Sinful Spoils of the White Forest. Then we summon Diabellstar the Sin Adjudicator, use its effect to pay 4,000 life points to pop the Nibiru the Primal Being, which enables us to summon Popular of the White Forest. If we have then 2 White Forest monsters in our graveyard, which we should, we can use Mystic Mystery or Popular's effect to set 2 of our White Forest monsters from our graveyard into the spell and trap zone as continuous spells, to then use those to summon Snake Eyes Doomed Dragon, and then synchro off Popular and Doomed Dragon into Snake Eyes Vengeance Dragon, or formerly known as Execute Dragon. This gets rid of the Nibiru, but it will cost you 4,000 life points and will make your board slightly worse by not being able to resummon Diabel's Queen of the White Diabel Queen of the White Forest. So yeah, that is something you can do if you do not want to run more Regina. Also, during this combo, instead of getting a pop 2 off of more Regina, you gain an Omni Negate in form of Ilia Sylvia. The next thing that you have to know is how do you play the White Forest combo if you have to open Witches of the White Forest as your first play. The issue with Witches of the White Forest is, although it is a true one-card combo, it will lock you out of Dark monsters. This means you cannot summon Azamina fusion monsters from your extra deck. So we have to play this slightly differently, and this will sadly be vulnerable to Nibiru. But you got to do what you got to do. Also, we will not be able to summon Necro-equipped Princess during the combo here. Instead, if we decide to play the Fiendsmith engine, we will have to pivot to summoning Fiendsmith Desiree or going into Abao or whatever you want to do. So, in this line, Witches of the White Forest will search Elzet of the White Forest. We then use Elzet of the White Forest, sending Witches of the White Forest as cost to play around Dominus Impulse, to then summon herself and search Sylvie of the White Forest. Sylvie of the White Forest will then search Tales of the White Forest. Then we synchro both Elzet and Sylvie into Archiella, Sinister Soul of the White Forest, which then uses its effects to search a White Forest card, to search as Elzet Azamina of the White Forest. The cost that we're paying is going to be the Tales of the White Forest because it will reset itself as a free material. And then later we can use Tales to search Diabels of the White Witch to gain access to Sin Adjudicator. Then we can use both Elzet Azamina of the White Forest and Archiella Sinister Soul of the White Forest to synchro summon into Diabel Queen of the White Forest, which will then retrieve our copy of Tales of the White Forest. Or if you wanted to keep Tales after the Tales activation after your opponent, after you summon Diabel, you instead add back Witches of the White Forest. I would suggest you rather add Tales because it can interact as another free discard for Diabel. Then we search off of Elzet Azamina of the White Forest, Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, which we then can use as free material for Diabels, the White Witch, to go then into Sin Adjudicator. Then optionally, we can resummon Sylvie of the White Forest by shuffling Archiella, Sinister Soul of the White Forest, from our graveyard back into the deck to summon itself out. Then we can Synchro 12 using both Diabels, the White Witch, and Sylvie to go into Snake Eyes Execute Dragon. An alternative, if you want to play it, is Despian Lulu Valilith because it plays slightly better into a very late-held Nibiru of your opponent. Yeah, so this is how you would play with only Witches of the White Forest and no other card. However, usually you will have other cards accompanying it, so this line might change depending on it. I have also some cool plays that you can do post ALIN, which should show you the flexibility and the skill expression that you can do with this deck. I will have to put here a disclaimer that the following plays are not standard and should be performed with caution to the context of the game state. But mainly, they should just teach you what you can do with this deck. The first one I wanted to show you is a really cool interaction that you can do if you open both one trap, usually Infinite Impermanence because it's the most common one, as well as Wanted plus Hollowed Azamina. Wanted plus Hollowed Azamina is already known as a very cool interaction because you can chain link one Hollowed, chain link two Wanted to basically gain free materials. If you want to do this, you can technically go even further beyond now post ALIN to use Wanted to search Sin Adjudicator, or also known as Diabel Star Vengeance, to then use both of those as material to summon either Azamina or Regina or Saint Azamina. Saint Azamina threatens your opponent with an immediate OTK, locks them out of targeting their own cards, for example, with a Bestial, um, and allows you to special summon another Azamina monster from your deck. Then you can use Infinite Impermanence as well as one of your spells in your graveyard or in your hand to summon out Diabell Star Vengeance from your graveyard, because Diabell Star Vengeance can summon itself from the graveyard. Uh, I linked here an example that allows even more extension. If you want to play this line even more greedy, this is a version that you can do. Instead of summoning out Saint Azamina immediately, you could instead go ahead and use Hollowed Azamina to first summon out a Mu Archilago, which then allows you to search Deception. Then you can use Muarchilago as the tribute for Deception to search LZ Azamina of the White Forest, then recycle Muarchilago off of Hollowed, and then use Hollowed to summon Saint Azamina off of both Sin Adjudicator and Deception. This will get you another free ad, as well as allow you to later on summon Diabell Star Vengeance from your graveyard by banishing both the hypothetical Infinite Impermanence and the Deception of the Sinful Spoils. And because we used Wanted, we can then use Wanted to shuffle back Deception of the Sinful Spoils to gain an additional draw. Off of St. Azamina, we could either summon Ilia Sylvia if we wanted an Omni Negate, or Mora Regina if we want to do even more plays. If we summon Mora Regina, we could even go into a Synchro 10 in form of a Light Dark Chaos Angel, which will get us a search off of LZ Azamina of the White Forest for any Sinful Spoils card. And yeah, you see this gets quite easily out of hand. But as said, this is greedy and should only be done in the correct game state. Another interaction you might have to know if you are considering to run Fiendsmith in your deck is that an equipped Fiendsmith's Requiem can be actually used as a material to contact fuse into Magistus Corroso. This might happen, for example, if you use Engraver to search Sanct, then Sanct to summon Requiem, then Requiem to summon Engraver, and then you use Requiem to equip itself to Engraver, which then, in that situation, instead of going into, let's say, a Necro-equip Princess, you can actually use the Requiem as one of the requirements for Magistus Corrosa, together, for example, with an Effect Veiler or a Diabell Star, if you ever need a Tuner 4. Yeah, a Spellcaster Tuner that is level 4. Also, a common way that you could summon Magistus Corroso is using any one of the Charmers and any monster that comes from the extra deck that your opponent might have in their graveyard. For example, Lina and summoning Blue-Eyed Spirit Dragon, or Dark and summoning your opponent's Lingaribo. Also, of course, this can be used to extend the line from page 35 of this presentation. The next thing that I have to show is what do you do under Fuvalos? Usually you will be Fuvalos when you summon a level 4 tuner and a level 2 non-tuner because you're threatening to go into a Synchro 6. So that is where your opponent most likely will Fuvalos if you open with White Forest. This then allows you, if you went off of LZ to search Sylvie, and then you use Sylvie to search Tails, you can then pivot here into doing the Diabell Star Vengeance line that I previously showed to not give your opponent a single draw under the Fuvalos. Or if you want to give them one draw but make your board a little bit stronger, you can also Synchro 6 into Archiella to get yourselves a copy of Woes of the White Forest. And for one draw, putting down 2 interactions is a good compromise that you can make under Fuvalos. Ending the game, of course, is another very important thing in this deck. We have a couple ways of facilitating the OTK. The first one I already mentioned, and that is Saint Azamina summoning LZ Azamina of the White Forest from your deck to then deal double reflected damage of the highest attack monster your opponent controls. Careful though, you need to first attack with any other monster than Saint Azamina, and your final attack being Saint Azamina. This is very hard to stop for your opponent because Saint Azamina has the inherent ability of not being able to be targeted by your opponent. And because it is the source of the reflected damage, it's the only real good way is either non-targeting removal for Saint Azamina or a card like Forbidden Droplet to interact with those. This is effective against decks that have big bodies, such as Mitsurugi or Blue Eyes. I have pulled off the OTK with this multiple times and through multiple interruptions. And this is especially easy now because of the Sinful Spoils Wanted engine interacting with Azamina. Um, the other OTK is a completely new one, and it revolves around the Sin Adjudicator Diabel's combo to summon Mystic Mystery, then going into Doom Dragon and Snake Eyes Execute Dragon. Performing this line works under the field spell's restriction as well as separately from your White Forest combo, and can be done off of one field spell. So after you bait multiple interruptions, you can use this line to put down up to 9,000 damage, as well as removing 4 cards from your opponent before you start attacking your opponent, which is pretty great. All right. The final OTK that I have to mention is the good old reliable double piercing off of Silvera. This became even stronger due to the Diabel's, the White Witch, Diabel Star the Sin Adjudicator, or Diabel Star Vengeance line that you can do. If you summon Silvera, Silvera can deal up to 4,800 piercing damage on her own. But if you combine Silvera and Archilla, you get to do up to 5,800 plus 6,000 double piercing damage. The way you would most easily get into Archilla, Sinister Soul of the White Forest, while also synchro summoning into Silvera, Wolf Tamer of the White Forest, is by using Diabel Star Vengeance's effect to summon out Archilla or Silvera. This allows both of these cards will then boost each other by 1,000 attack, which then doubles the piercing damage. A 1,000 attack increase is 2,000 potential extra piercing damage. So this can also consistently OTK through Bestials or other quick effect summons during the battle phase, which is fairly neat. The next interaction that I want to cover is regarding Deck Devastation Virus, Eradicator Epidemic Virus, or Full Force Virus. This is a play that I have come up with in response to the Droll Mulcharmy meta, where your opponent will just Mulcharmy you on the first occasion, or use Droll and Lockbird. Alternatively, I've already done this if I have the feeling that my opponent actually has an Ash Blossom and Joy Spring in their hand. This is mainly a prediction that you can do. So what you can do is you summon Diabel Star, the Black Witch, setting Deception of the Sinful Spoils. Then you flip up Deception of the Sinful Spoils. But if you really cannot afford to tribute the monster, you do not activate Deception. Or if you're under Droll, you cannot activate it in the first place. Then you will set one of the virus cards. And on your opponent's turn, you will use the virus card as soon as possible, or as soon as it's logically necessary, tribute off the Diabel Star, the Black Witch, to resolve the virus. In the following chain, Diabel Star, the Black Witch, will activate her second effect, sending for effect the Deception of the Sinful Spoils that you flipped face up to the graveyard to summon herself out. Then she can set one Sinful Spoils card from your deck, which is usually Wanted, because Wanted can get us access later on our turn, to send it to Diabelsar Vengeance, which already has its summoning condition met by having a trap card, aka the virus, in the graveyard. And then also, the Deception that we sent for Diabelstar will reset itself in the end phase. That is a pretty good interaction that you can do, for example, versus Malice. If they decide to hand trap you, then then make Triple Tactics Thrust live, and you want to then blow them out with a Deck Devastation virus, because Deck Devastation virus affects every single Malice monster. secret effects of the White Forest Azamina deck. Diabelle's the White Witch. Monsters you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects while you control 2 or more Diabelle monsters. Archiella Sinistrus, Soul of the White Forest, protects all your synchro monsters that are either illusion or spellcaster from also being destroyed by card effects. A cool interaction that you can do is Chainlink 2 Diabelle summon Archiella in response to a Chainlink 1 Raigeki. This will preserve both the Diabelle as well as the Archiella, and then allow you to resolve Archiella to search one spellcaster. And Archiella can also search Effect Veiler here, which is pretty solid, a pretty solid compromise if you face an immediate Raigeki after your Ilia Sylvia was outed. Elzet, Azamina of the White Forest, allows you on field to activate her effect to fusion summon one Azamina monster from your extra deck by using monsters from your hand or field as material. Because she is an illusion and the other White Forest monsters are light spellcasters, this usually enables you to summon Azamina Muarchilago or Ilia Sylvia, or if you have Diabelle Star Vengeance in your hand or on your field, you can instead decide to either summon uh, Azamina Sol Eresiton or Azamina Mora Regina, which is also a pretty good option. Deception of the Sinful Spoils has the hidden effect of if a monster is sent to your opponent's graveyard and you control an Azamina monster except during the damage step, you can make your opponent lose 1,500 life points, and if you do, gain 1,500 life points. This might come up in time, but as of now, I've only resolved this effect like twice. Azamina Archilago and Azamina Ilia Sylvia both have a similar hidden effect of if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add one Sinful Spoils spell, or in the case of Ilia Sylvia, trap from your deck to your hand. This happens during the damage step, so this is not ashable, which is great. And also allows you to get double value off of Muarchilago if you really need the second Sinful Spoils card. In addition, Azamina Muarchilago reduces your opponent's monster's attack by 500 and their death by 500 for each Azamina monster, including herself, that you control. So this can have some anti-synergy with Saint Azamina, so keep that in mind when you attempt the Saint Azamina OTK. Azamina Ilia Sylvia will double any battle damage other Azamina monsters do. Um, but this will not double the reflected damage off of Saint Azamina. So keep that in mind. These are also some important rulings that you have to know if you're playing this deck. Um, I will not read them for you, but I will leave it open here for a couple seconds in case you want to read these rulings. All right, another engine that becomes viable post ALIN is the Delta of Invitation engine. This is an idea by Bim Wygio, a fellow YouTuber, where you can use Delta of Invitation to go through through Eldritch the Golden Lord and Fallen Angel of the Golden Land to then enable you to summon Varodras, the final bringer of the end times, on the 5th summon, as well as gaining you a quote unquote free material to send for your White Forest cards. This is not standard in the slightest, but it is a cool option that you can do to play to stop your opponent from using Droll Lockbird against you. Droll Lockbird being a very problematic card for this deck, as you see, because this deck searches a billion cards. Here are some post-ALIN's sample lists that I have done during my process of testing post-ALIN. I will not commentate too much on these, but take a look and feel free to either copy these or adapt your list upon this. These are early lists, the first ones that I have done and were based off of my pre-ALIN lists. This is after testing a little bit more. One comment I will make here is that Spellbound seems to be a pretty decent card against Malice because it also stops the tributing of Lingaribo, which then can make your opponent feel a false sense of security if you have Woes of the White Forest set. This is my most current list that I have built. These are a little bit more experimental and have some ideas, for example, Foolish Burial Goods to send either the Black Goat Laughs or Sinful Spoils of Slumber Morion or Curse of Diabel to the graveyard to gain additional value off of this without committing too much into Draw and Lockbird. This is probably the most common type of list I have seen from other players, but I personally dislike it because it commits very hard into the Fiendsmith engine. What is the game plan of this deck? Going first, we want to summon Archela under any cost and resolve her. And we want to guarantee our access to our Azamina engine, if possible, until the fifth summon. And also, we want to get access to two Sinful Spoils cards before or at the fifth summon, because this will allow us to do the more Rogina stuff that I have previously explained. We also want to save monster graveyard effects until we control a Diabel, Queen of the White Forest. This is mainly to beat Bestials. Under Fuvalos, though, our plan has to slightly change. Instead of committing the full combo, we will have to try to get to Woes with the White Forest and Simple Spoils of the White Forest as soon as possible, as well as committing into the Diabel Star Vengeance lines. Uh, we have to avoid discarding non-engine that can interrupt our opponent because we need to conserve as many interactions as possible. Also, what we should try to do is to bait an Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring or find an out to it. This is mainly to guarantee that Woes of the White Forest resolves on our opponent's turn. And we should also stack, of course, as many follow-up effects as possible. Going second on our opponent's turn, we mainly want to conserve our resources if we can, but if you have to throw a hand trap, you have to. Also, of course, draw and resolve a Mulchari Fuvalos, Lancia, Meowls, Perulia, whatever applies right now, because cheap wins are the best. Uh, Also, on our turn, we want to use Wanted Diabellstar, Subversion, or Black Goat Laughs to force interaction on our opponent's turns. Then we want to try to get Triple Tactics Thrust or Talent live as soon as possible if we play it. Then we also want to conserve Elzet and the Azamina access until it is safe to use. The same applies also to the Diabel Star Vengeance lines, if possible. We should also look for OTK angles off of the previously discussed methods of simple OTKs. Also, diminishing our opponent's grind if possible is a viable option. And if we open Cult by the Grave, a very powerful play that we can do is use Diabel, Queen of the White Forest, to recover a used Cult by the Grave. Using a card that is limited twice in a duel is quite unfair. And also, something that we can do against inexperienced players and again that do not know what our deck does is to force interaction while we control Diabel, Queen of the White Forest. Because if that ever resolves, you kill them. What are important reads that you have to do during a duel? Draw and Lockbird. Draw and Lockbird is basically a guessing game. If you can read on your opponent's face that they feel fairly confident that you're not doing your turn, you might want to, instead of using Sylvie to access your combo, search a Woes of the White Forest. Also, if you can force an early Dominus Impulse, it will lock your opponent out of Drone Lockbird, as well as Nibiru the Primal Being. Dominus Impulse is another very impactful card, especially due to the debut of Malice, our probably hardest matchup in the game. In this case, we want to use Elzet of the White Forest while we do not control any cards. That means if we have used the field spell to search her, We then want to use the field spell as the cost for LZ of the White Forest to limit our opponent using Dominus Impulse from their hand. Also, forcing it, as said, can check if your opponent has Drone Lockbird or Nibiru. Nibiru, the Primal Being. I already went over this a lot. One important thing going second is threatening an OTK with one line while you still have a backup line to OTK. As you see, we have a lot of lines to do the OTK, so keep that in mind. Ash Blossom Joyous Spring. We should sequence our LZ before we summon a normal summon Sylvie. This usually baits an Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and then we can use Sylvie Search Simple Spores of the White Forest to then summon out the LZ. Then we can synchro into Archiella, and Archiella can then search ourselves Azamina LZ. Then we can go into Diabel, retrieve the Simple Spores of the White Forest, and gain access to our Azamina engine, which will then, in addition, play again through Nibiru. Dominus Purge is similar to Dominus Impulse. Use LZ or Engraver early, and chain block LZ Azamina of the White Forest if possible. Bestial monsters, we usually do not care much about them, but in case we have to actually worry about them, we can opt to shuffle Azamina monsters from our field with the Hollowed Azamina if necessary. Also, we can try and wait to use our level 4 tuner graveyard effects to bait them out while we control Diabel, Queen of the White Forest. You would not believe how many times I won the game because my opponent chained a Bestial while I controlled a Diabel. Infinite Impermanence. If targeting negation is a threat, we might sometimes be able to dodge it using the fusion effect of Sinful Spores of the White Forest. Also, if our Synchro monsters are targeted by it, sometimes it's worth to chain one of our level 4 tuners in our graveyard to tag it out and resolve the effect. Dark Ruler No More. If the card ever becomes popular, you can consider running or siding Scourge of the White Forest, a quick play spell card that will targeting negate one card on your opponent's field by tributing a Synchro monster, and then possibly summoning out an illusion monster from your graveyard. And that is also a very nice way how you can re-enable a Diabel Queen of the White Forest. Mulcharmy Fuvolos, I have discussed about this. Sometimes you just will lose the game, and it will just happen. Certain cards are very hard for this deck to beat, such as Drone Lockbird, Dimensional Shifter, Mulcharmy Perulia, or if it ever becomes meta again, a Super Polymerization into Saint Azamina. If those happen, it's tough luck, but you might be able to deal with it. Also, always watch your replays and see if you could have maybe won the game anyways. How good is this deck? Pre-ALIN, I think this is probably the third best deck right now, but it is underutilized mainly because pro players do not want to commit to this deck right now because it is a very short format. Post-ALIN, it is probably somewhere within the top 5 best decks, depending on the usage of Drone Lockbird as well as Mulcharmy Perulia in the main deck. I would put it around slightly weaker than Mitsurugi and significantly weaker than Malice post-ALIN. Again, take this with a grain of salt, as this format has not really started yet, but this is my observations from about 30 matches of testing post-ALIN. I got here some sample matches. If you access this presentation, you can look at these later on. If you want to see more matches or want to submit your own, I can be reached via Discord, and I can review these matches and maybe include them in this PowerPoint. Also, this PowerPoint, at least the sample matches post-ALIN, will be always revised just in case some new good matches appear. There's always more that you can talk about this deck, but I need more testing to figure out what is important and what is not. I tried to cover the most important things of this deck, but it's not always possible to cover everything because some things might take months and months of testing or another look with fresh eyes to solve certain problems. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. And special shout outs to BimYGO and his community for being a big help in finding combo lines as well as labbing them. Rancor at 46 for being a bro. Team Azrael for being bros. And JK Entertainment for being the best locals in Germany. Anyways, see ya.